Hi, hello, how are you? This is a walkthrough of the TAC L2P text, which came from the sample 2024 examination. I'm going to be going through all four questions of this SAQ, and I'll be walking you through how to sort of think about the different questions. The very first question says to identify a function of language between lines 1 and 11. If we remember, the functions of language are under rec PMP, referential, which is about information, emotive, which is about showing some form of, as the name suggests, emotion to the other person, conative, where you impel a response or an action or a thought from the other person, poetic, which has a certain aesthetic quality to language, metalinguistic, when you talk about language itself, and phatic, which is where the conversation, the things you talk about are sort of irrelevant beyond the social context you're in. That's sort of the six functions, and we're asked in the question to identify a function of language between lines 1 and 11. I think most people, upon reading this, would quickly understand that this is a referential in nature. It's conveying information, and at its essence, what Jakob Schaven really meant with referential function is one of four things. Yes, it's about conveying information, but it's about things like, let's have a look. Let me write it down. It's about naming and specifying information. So it could be under something called identifying. It could be describing stuff. It could be stating facts. Or it could be conveying information, right? It could be one of these four things. That's what the referential function is all about. And one of the most banal links to referential function is declaratives. I've seen so many people that say, oh, because they use declarative, therefore it links to referential function. But you really have to think a bit more deeply. You have to think about this part of the text and ask yourself, what about this gives me information? What about this tells me something? What about this educates me on something, right? That's the question. And one of my most favorite examples here is here, right? The formatting in the form of dot points. That's the first thing that I would say. So formatting in the form of dot points. I'd actually make a link to coherence here, which is that it promotes accessibility of information. They can easily understand the conditions needed to apply to the program, and therefore that contributes to accessibility of information, which supports the referential function. That's what I would do for the first one. Another one could be something like jargon, like probationary license, right? That's very jargonistic in nature, and that sort of conveys information about what exactly they are referring to in the opening section of the About Us page. So jargonistic phrases, because it gives us information, right? That's what referential function is all about. So probationary license would be one of them. You could consider even proper nouns, like Transport Accident Commission. Tells us the who of the program, like who is responsible for running it. So Transport Accident Commission, right? Even something like this, the or, which is a coordinator in all caps, right? Also gives us additional information about the exclusionary criteria to join the program. So we can talk about the coordinator in non-standard capitalization, or you can even think about parenthesis here. So they say learner license, and then they say all plates in brackets. That gives us more information about, I believe later down they say all plate rather than license or learner plate. No, they don't. But whatever it is, they give you the full form of it first, and then in brackets, they give you the shorthand form of it. That's also conveying information about, the shorthand and what the shorthand means. So the parenthesis is also a good feature. So learner license, and then they say all plates. So these are few examples. I'm sure there are more, but these are few examples of how the referential function manifests, right? So try and not go towards the declarative zone. A lot of people just say declarative sentence type equals referential. Think a bit more deeply. Referential function is about how is information conveyed, and it's with any of these features here. So the second question is asking about how a reassuring tenor is established between lines 30 and 33. So that's this section right here. Okay. So the audience is probably going to have a bit of anxiety, a bit of challenge, right? Because they are teenagers who are having trouble getting an L plate, a license. They are going to have certain anxieties, right? So this reassuring tenor is there to sort of acknowledge the challenges that they're facing. So this is what I'd say. The reassuring tenor present is that acknowledge challenges that they are facing. Not only just acknowledge, but they're trying to offer solutions and support for those sort of challenges. They also want to mitigate any anxiety that they might have. Anxiety. And I think they do that through creating a sort of supportive tenor, right? So it's these four things that they're trying to do by using this sort of reassuring tenor. They're trying to acknowledge the challenges that they're facing, offer some tangible solutions, mitigate the anxiety that they're facing, and create this sort of supportive tenor. One of the best examples here is give it a go. That's an imperative sentence structure. It seems seemingly directive, but the imperative here actually functions as it's an encouraging exhortation. It suggests a sort of positive, supportive relationship, and it's not necessarily commanding. It's giving them a gentle push to go out of their shell, start driving, and not being afraid of driving as well. So it creates this sense of approachability towards the DIVRS and towards the idea of driving itself. So the give it a go, the imperative structure, it creates a good phrasing is an encouraging exhortation. Another one is you, used in the second person pronoun. It's like used within it's the you is used alongside a hypothetical conditional clause. For example, if you don't have a car to learn in, and it's talking about you in the second person pronoun sense. It's not necessarily pointing fingers, right? And so by placing the reader in a hypothetical scenario, not saying you are in this situation or something like that, it acknowledges the potential challenges with empathy. And it engages the reader in a sense because it creates this personal connection and shows an understanding and empathy towards their anxieties, right? This you here is used in the second person pronoun sense. And yeah, it places the reader in a hypothetical scenario. And yeah, it doesn't point fingers in a sense. So that's also another good one. It acknowledges their challenges. So that's a good feature. Stuck in the passenger seat, that's sort of a metaphor. And it basically depicts the reader's situation as a one of, if you're in the passenger seat, you're not in the control of the car, or you're not in control of your life in a sense. It creates a sense of passivity and a lack of control. And by acknowledging this, by them being stuck in the passenger seat, it highlights L2P's ability to sort of offer a solution, and that fosters hope, reassurance towards those teenagers who might be struggling to get their license. So this metaphor is really nice. I like the triplet of adjectives here: safe, no pressure, and free. The triplet of positively connoted adjectives that has a cumulative effect, and it creates a positive framing, and it sort of emphasizes the benefits of the program. The word safe addresses potential fears that they might have. No pressure sort of mitigates anxiety, and free highlights accessibility of the program, right? And yeah, it creates a reassuring and appealing image of the learning experience through those sort of positive connotations that are there. Let's move on then to question number 3. We asked how modal verbs are used to reflect the roles of the learner, the mentor, and the DIVRS. Now, I think because it's 4 marks, how I would think about this is sort of, because if you look at the text, right, we have this part here, which is specifically directed towards the learner, and here it's sort of directed towards the mentors. We see here that they are using very high modality verbs here, but quite low modality verbs here. And so the question becomes why. So I would go against having one paragraph on learner, another paragraph on mentor, another paragraph on showing how modal verbs reflect the role of DIVRS. Rather, I would talk about the learner in one paragraph and allocate 2 marks for that, mentor in another paragraph, allocate 2 marks for that, and talk about how DIVRS's role is reflected through those examples. So I'd have 2 examples, one for the learner, one for the mentor. And if you look here, we're actually seeing a lot of words like must, right? It's a very high modality verb. We call it deontic modality verbs, and it expresses obligation. Deontic essentially means a duty or an obligation. It's very philosophical. Deontology, it's all about obligation, right? So deontic modality, we see it through must, okay? And so they say you must apply through the L2P page. It doesn't just suggest a sort of action. It imposes onto the learner a mandatory requirement, and that sort of reflects DIVRS's authoritative role in setting the expectations, the guidelines, procedural guidelines of the LTP program, and it creates this sort of clear hierarchy between the learner and the DIVRS, where they are sort of expected to comply with these prescribed actions. Let's have a think. What else is there? So that's the high modality of must here. We also have the will here. But if you look at 41 to 49, where we use deontic modality here, we are shifting to what's called dynamic modality further down below. Oops. Yes, we're shifting to dynamic modality, or it basically expresses ability or capacity to do something. So they say stuff like, you can also build up your training, driving, mentoring. This modal verb can sort of shows the inherent potential of the mentor to develop skills through participation. So it's sort of a mutually beneficial for both the IVRS, but also for the mentor themselves. And of course, that contrasts very sharply with the must here and the will, and it shows a sense of developmental or a empowering experience for these mentors. And also, we're sort of setting systems of obligation. We're saying you must do this, it's non-negotiable. Here, it implies a degree of agency or opportunity, suggesting that they're not just volunteers, but active participants in the program who gain as much as they give to the program and give to those struggling outplayers. So that's the sort of distinction that I would show, right? So the mentor, the DIVRS role, or it's sort of a procedural framework that they are giving to those L platers. It's not necessarily telling them something as a suggestion, but rather a set of non-negotiable actions. So it asserts control over the application process, and asserts their the power dynamic between the IVRS and the L platers as the program's administrators, and it also shows a sense of these are the rules, these are the standards I expect of you, and I expect you to adhere to them, no matter what. That's what they're sort of conveying here. Whereas here, they're sort of giving them more agency to do as they choose, and yeah, that's the sort of distinction there. And so the two words that you might want to use is deontic modality, used in 34 to 40, or high modality verb works as well, and lower modality or dynamic modality in lines 41 to 49. Okay, so that's what I would say for that. The last question is asking about two audiences and analyze the use of politeness strategies to support the aspirations. I think part of the confusion here comes from where the marks go. It's 5 marks. But it's a long question. That's a good thing because it's not just a broad question. It's almost very easy to predict where the marks go. So 1 mark is going to go towards identifying two audiences. And then we have 4 marks left. So it's going to be 2 times 2 marks equals analyzing politeness strategy to support aspirations of each audience. Now, I think question number 3 give you a pretty big clue as to who the two audiences are. It's going to be L-platers and also mentors, people who want to become mentors. I think another one of your confusions might be what aspirations are. So aspirations, you can literally take it in the very literal English sense. It's about your hopes, your ambitions, your goals that you have for your future. It's about what you want to achieve or what you want to become. So say, I don't know, imagine a guy called or a girl called Sarah, and she wants to, she's fascinated by science and wants to help people, right? Her aspiration, what's her aspiration? Her aspiration is going to be become a doctor, right? So this means She dreams of attending med school. She wants to learn how to diagnose. She wants to work in a hospital. These are all aspirations that she has, right? And to achieve this aspiration, the tangible things that she's going to do, Sarah will likely, at the very start, she's going to apply to medical school. She's going to study hard. She's going to, I don't know, volunteer or get work experience, right? These are things that will manifest from her aspiration. So aspiration is the driving force behind her actions, her decisions. It's the goal that motivates her to work hard and pursue her dreams, right? So having that in mind, that aspirations is in a very literal sense, for learners, the aspirations for them, like what are their goals in life? It might be, they're 18 years old, they might be struggling financially to find someone to help them drive, right, for example. So these learners have very specific aspirations. So let me write it down. Learners, I would say one, they want to gain independence through obtaining that license. They want to overcome barriers to driving. They want to increase mobility and access to opportunities, build, confidence in driving abilities, right? And barriers might be, finding someone to drive with, or it could be financial barriers or lack of access to cars, right? These are sort of the aspirations, or the things that they want to achieve for the learners. Whereas for the mentors, it could be stuff like contributing back to community. It could be to develop new skills, make a positive impact, or even like personal growth and, self-fulfillment. These are all things that mentors want to achieve, right? So these are the driving forces behind learners and mentors' involvement within the L2P program. We can literally use the examples we were talking about before. So stuff like the metaphor, um, give it a go, these triplet of adjectives, right? These are all examples that you can use for learners, and for mentors, we'll get to it in a second. Let's have a look at learners first. So we can do any of these features that we were talking about before. Try not to reuse them, but totally fine if you do. Let's have a think about some features. Okay, let's have a look at this sentence. Not everyone has Adobe. That's a form of hedging, right? It avoids this sort of direct or potentially accusatory statement like, I don't know, you need Adobe. Instead, it acknowledges the common limitation because these people probably are financially disadvantaged. So, it's a common limitation that people might have, and it shows a sense of empathy, shows a sense of understanding. Okay? And the use of everyone here is inclusive. It creates a sense of shared experience. So the metalanguage I'd sort of use is the negative quantifier not and the indefinite pronoun everyone that functions as a hedge. Okay, instead of saying you need Adobe, not everyone has Adobe. Right, that's a hedge. It softens the potential for a face-threatening act. So this sort of constructions that they've used for the sentence, it acknowledges the potential lack of a specific resource without accusing or blaming them for not having it. So it shows a sense of empathy, and you can also link it to negative face needs as well. Let's have a think. Once the application is received, let's think. Okay, so this is a passive or an agentless passive construction, right? Okay, so it uses a passive construction and it sort of de-emphasizes potential errors or delays in the process. So it creates a sense of detachment from potential mistakes and provides reassurance to those people. Saying something like, we will be in contact with the high modality verb, we will, it creates a sense of procedural certainty and reassurance towards the learners. And as well, the passive voice here, you need to think how to word this. It creates a depersonalization of the process, and so it sort of removes blame being put on the learner. Okay, whilst the high modality verb will, that future tense structure creates a sense of security and guidance for those learners as well. Okay, so those are a few examples you can talk about. Let's have a look at mentors. So mentors have aspirations of sort of contribute to community, develop skills, make positive impact, personal growth, etc. Let's think about the positive connotations of fantastic, right? It enhances the appeal of volunteering, right? Creates a sense of the fantastic as well as you using the second person pronoun you. It sort of creates a sense of inclusion and positive association with the program. It's very inclusive. It creates a sense of belonging in the community, right? And yeah, that can sort of link to making a positive impact, for example, and even personal growth. Um, you can even consider something like interact, gain, and move towards independence. That's parallelism. It's three phrases in parallel with each other, and that sort of emphasizes the sort of impact that they can make on these young drivers. And you can also link it to any one of these as well. And I'm sure there's also other examples you can talk about, but for 5 marks, that's enough. So just 1 mark, identify 2 audiences, and 2 marks times 2 for each audience, identify 1 example. So 1 example for learners, 1 example for mentors. That should be enough. Should be enough. Yes, at least 2 examples. Yes, should be enough. So 1 for learners and 1 for mentors. That's very well enough. Okay, so hopefully this helped. If you have any questions, please DM me. More than happy to help you.